Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. We're continuing our reading of Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. It is a national bestseller, even made it on a worldwide best-selling list. It's been used now in much of our pop culture here in America, and feminists really use this book a lot, alright? The author is a feminist, and she's really anti-religion except for the Jays, and this really comes out in her work because it really comes after Islam and Christian values. Okay. Let's begin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We left off on page 71. Let's begin. Now remember, the character Moria has come back. She's in the scene, okay? It makes me feel safer, Bismillah, that Moria is here. We can go to the washroom. If we put our hands up, though there's a limit to how many times a day. They mark it down on a chart. So here you see the control, where they're keeping track of how long people go in the bathroom. You know, their existence is very managed. I watch the clock, electric and round, at the front over the green blackboard. 2:30 comes during testifying. Aunt Helen is here, as well as Aunt Lydia, because testifying is special. Aunt Helena is fat. She once headed a Weight Watchers franchise operation in Iowa. She's good at testifying. So, she did something interesting here. Weight Watchers is like a throwback to like the 90s, where it was very popular on TV in America to see commercials for Weight Watchers. I think, if I recall right, they caught, I don't know if it was Oprah Winfrey or very famous celebrities doing it, and then they found out that they were not even eating that, and they were using like clinical stuff to lose weight and whatnot. And you know, it was a scam. It was a way to get money. It's like there was a drink called Slim Fast. If you just drink these shakes, you will have all the nutrients you need and you will lose weight. There was a lot of gimmicks in the 90s. So she picked like a redneck state because she mentioned Iowa. So a woman who had a Weight Watchers franchise in Iowa who is currently fat. The irony of that, she used to sell Weight Watchers stuff but is now fat. So you are picturing a sort of conservative Christian woman here. And so the author has painted this character's picture for us. It's Janine telling us about how she was gang R-worded at 14 and had an abortion. Now, boom, she drops a heavy line right there. You don't see that coming. The testaments are where people do confession. Now, confession is important, and a confession is something uniquely Catholic. And if you look at the Inquisition, like the Spanish Inquisition, how far they would go to get confessions, at that point, people are saying anything just to get off the rack, you know. And confessions later on got softer, but confessions are something where you imagine the Catholicism, right? Because in Islam, we don't really reveal our sins to people. Like, we don't go to an imam and, you know, at this specific time and systematically do confessions, right? That gets you a lot of blackmail. I believe Scientology has something called, like, going clear. Scientology is a really wild, made-up religion. It's a cult. And they have a sort of confessional system, and they archive all those stuffs, and, you know, they get dirt on people. So it's very strong here. And Janine is a weird character. You'll see later on. I could picture her in my head, so the author did a great job at enlightening us on the character. She told the same story last week. She seemed almost proud of it. While she was telling, it may not even be true. At testifying, it's safer to make things up than to say you have nothing to reveal. But since it's Janine, it's probably more or less true. So here, this also reminds me of, I was watching a documentary on Japan and how in their current systems, when they try to get confessions from people, it can be pretty intense as well. They have a different interrogation system in Japan currently. You can go ahead and look that up. I was going to share it on the community tab, but I was like, I got so much other things to do. But it's almost like there's a methodology of torture them and until they confess. So her using that in her fiction story isn't too far off. But her contempt for Janine grows, okay? But whose fault was it? Aunt Helena says, holding up one plump finger. So, like, when you do this, her fault, her fault, her fault, we chant in unison. Who led them on? Aunt Helena beams, pleased with us. She did, she did, she did. Okay, so, and then it goes, why did God allow such a terrible thing to happen? Teach her a lesson, teach her a lesson, teach her a lesson. So the chanting repetition, this is something a feminist will do to really rile you up. Okay? So they call that victim blaming. Now, the raw reality of that situation is that, okay, let me give it an example. I think that'll be a better one. I was told, because I'll try to keep it as gray as possible, so I don't like reveal anyone's identities, not even though that you would know them. But there was a woman who, she was like accepting alcoholic drinks from men, and eventually one of those guys who kept giving her drinks approached her, and he asked her if she wanted to go out, and she said no, and she was like, she's chubby, she's not very attractive really. Not saying that she's a bit of an alcoholic as well. I'm not saying that she should have accepted because she's ugly, but he kept giving her drinks, she kept accepting, and he took this as a green light that she was interested when she was just trying to get free drinks. And then he got offended and I guess said some words to her, and then she acted all confused, and like she didn't understand why he thought that she was interested in him. And at that moment, you like, with women like that, she's a bar hopper, you know exactly what you're doing when you accept a drink, when you accept free food. Like, if your friend is there, hey, I want to send my friend an appetizer over to the table, you know that that's your friend. The chef wants to be kind because you show up all the time to their restaurant and they want to give you some, a dessert on the house. That's normal. But when men are sent cocktails, that is a different story. That is a form of courting and flirting. And the point of men making women drink alcohol is to the point where they get loose enough, lower their inhibitions, erase the shyness, and let them in their pants. And so, she had her, cleavage out. She was someone who's been around the block. She knows exactly what she's doing. And she was leading him on to get free drinks, but was surprised that he expected to go out with her instead of him just being a pay pig. So it would not be right for him to, punch her or slap her or something like that. But when you take drinks and gifts from strangers, you don't know what you're getting, so you should be careful. Okay? That's why someone could offer you something, that don't mean you have to accept it, even if the offer is good. There's always strings attached. It's very rare that you get a gift where there isn't strings attached, okay? So, be careful. Be very careful. I've had experiences in my life where someone offered me a ride home. We're very close. And they start acting kind of strange. And you're like, hey man, I gotta vomit. Can you just open the door? And then I just get out the car. My mom taught me that trick. because, hey man, we're coming out of class. This was back before I was a Muslim. Oh, you want to drop me off like a distance from where I live? Fine, you know. Sometimes you can be naive and think the best of people. When they start acting a little bit sketch, then you have to, pull the ejection seat, as they call it. I don't think I was leading him on, but in his brain, he thought that okay meant something else. And I think that's something that you have to talk about with people, is that your mindset is different than theirs. One of the biggest lessons I learned when I came to California, where I grew up, and in Utah and Philly, you have what you call a kickback. Men and women chilling. You're just chilling. No one's doing anything. Like, let's say you're around a bonfire. Somebody's eating chips. Someone's over there talking. Someone's by the PlayStation. You're doing a kickback. Just relax. Now, came to California, that was a different story. It was more common to where it's like, hey, if you come over to the party, that means everyone's interested in fornicating with each other. And this was a bit of a culture shock, and you're like, nah, I'm not down with that. I'm not into that. What are you talking about? Like, we're just kicking it. And then that made me have a huge wake-up call where the cultural customs of where you grew up in your neighborhood, your mindset, you go somewhere else, it isn't the same. And you gotta remember that. There's different customs in certain places that people take things differently. And some men, they think that they just have to push and push and push. And eventually the woman will just give it up. They don't really respect the word no. They don't see the art in courting. Because there's some men who, they have the gift of gab. They're charming. They're suave. They know how to make a woman feel relaxed and comfortable. There's other men who they think, hey, she's dressed this way. Or I'm a guy and I'm just going to ask her out. And then when she says no, I'm going to call her a lesbian or I'm going to insult her, be vulgar. They don't know how to take rejection with class. And then this makes the woman choke up more and be like, oh, I'm so glad I rejected this guy because look how he freaked out just by a simple no, I'm not interested. So the art of being rejected is important for young men. And it's important for young girls to understand there are men who cannot take rejection and you need to be aware of your surroundings. That's why I think some of these Tinder, Bumble, I think that's the name of a dating app, where they're just meeting up with random people and you're getting in the car, you're going to secure locations like hotels with these people. You gotta be crazy. People go to frat parties, they're using all kinds of intoxicants. They black out, they expect other people to babysit them. And I remember in an episode of American Horror Story, Coven, I believe it was, where one of the witches, she uses a bunch of intoxicants, passes out at the frat party, and the frat boys do a train on her. And it's really heartbreaking. It's the directors captured the essence of the nastiness of it really well. And, it's horrible. But I would tell my daughters, never go to a damn frat party. Ain't nothing good for you there. But American culture has put the frat parties in movies, in Hollywood. And colleges allow these parties. Okay? It's something very common. Hazing. It's very weird. It's a very strange thing that America has done to their universities. And so, what the feminists did here is be like, oh, it's never the woman's fault, it's always the man's fault. But when it comes to this word here, led, men are driven by something different and women are driven by something different. To drive, to lead, to entice, to bait, to confuse. I had to learn that lesson a few times. And it's something that I value that I survived, but now I know how to communicate effectively. When you're not interested in something, you make it clear cut. And now I know as Muslim women, we're not allowed to I don't think we're allowed to like swear at people, but I'm not sure. But follow my example here. I would come home as a server, and I'd get off the bus. You know, this is like back in like 2009, and it's dark. Had my leather jacket on, you know, and everything, and a guy, he was like, pss, 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 which is it's like a whistle they do for hookers, and I was like, and I looked, and I gave him the bird and said, "F you." Like, that's a very curt, like, to the point, like, I'm not interested, F off. Another time, I was at the bus stop waiting. There was a drunk guy there, and he was catcalling me, harassing me, and I just I cussed him out. You know, F off, get the F out of here, man. Like, go home to your wife. You know, like, you can't trash talk too much because they could pull out a weapon. You know, they may rush you. But sometimes, depending on the individual, you can measure it. They'll get the point, and they go away. But when you're soft and don't answer and you freeze up, they take that as a consent. That silence is consent. And so if you don't speak up and you're shy, you know, that could cause problems. But there's other men who, they think you don't have a right to talk back, and they'll clock you. That's why I think public transportation is extremely dangerous for women. Extremely dangerous. I don't care what no one says. Women are super vulnerable. And so that paragraph where Aunt Helena says that and the people are chanting, I look at it in so many manifold ways. And I think you should as well, is my point. Okay, let's continue. Last week, Janine burst into tears. Aunt Helena made her kneel at the front of the classroom, hands behind her back where we could all see her red face and dripping nose. So, clearly, have the red face, we can tell that she's a pale person, right? She's translucent. She's pink, you know, dripping nose, so she's been crying. She's sniveling. She's groveling, she's sniveling, and you kind of see her as pathetic by the way the author describes the scene. Her hair dull, blonde, her eyelashes so light they seem not there. So you can just see like a inbred Oklahoma woman. Reminds me of an Orange is the New Black. There was like a white trash meth head girl, and she had like really bad teeth, but she kind of had that vibe to her. I forget the character's name, but she had that kind of look in here. So when I first read this description, I thought of that character. The lost eyelashes of someone who's been in a fire. Burned eyes. She looked disgusting, weak, squirmy, blotchy, pink like a newborn mouse. None of us wanted to look like that, ever. For a moment, even though we knew what was being done to her, we despised her. Cry baby, cry baby, cry baby. We meant it, which is the bad part. I used to think well of myself, I didn't then. That was last week. This week Janine doesn't wait for us to jeer at her. It was my fault, she says. It was my own fault. I led them on. I deserve the pain. So here, the feminists inserted, I deserve the pain. This hits a nerve. No one deserves to, like, go, like, you're innocent in terms of, like, it was just, I've seen, you know, like, for example, Anna Kasparian. She said one of the reasons why she left the left was she was picking up poop from her dog. She was on a walk, and a homeless man came behind her and started bumping up against her. And she was shocked, and then when she shared it online, the leftists, who say they protect women, were saying, you shouldn't shame homeless people, don't call them homeless, call them unhoused. They attacked her, and they shocked her to her core, how the left really protects predators and is soft on crime. And Anna clearly did not deserve that. She was minding her own business, doing her thing. But what I've told myself sometimes is that I walked into that trap. Why was I so foolish? Why didn't I see it? What's wrong with me? I wish someone would have warned me. See, you have these sort of thoughts that help you survive so that next time you're more street smart. Inshallah. Because not every woman gets a second chance. you know. That's why, like in The Sopranos, the therapist lady, she was walking to her car, and there was a guy, and he R-worded her on the stairs. And this is a very common thing where in those dark parking garages where there's no security, few people around, the creepos lurk there. Okay? I think they need to have patrols in the parking garages to protect women, especially women who work late at night and they gotta go home, right? I think and you should have a male escort, but feminists say it's oppressive for women to have male chaperones. And liberals say defund the police. So, security guards aren't like police officers, but they're a form of security. And in some hospitals, you can ask for an escort to your car. They have a parking garage, some no, if they don't have the staff. But I saw her example in that show, and I was like, I won't park in a place like that. And if there's no other option, then we're going to go during the day, and during the day, we're going to have some self-defense tools. And see, liberals are against the Second Amendment and so much. If a woman has a concealed carry and someone tries to R-word her in the parking lot of the parking garage, right, you're going to have a better chance. At least allow women to carry a pokey, you know what I mean? Because sometimes pepper spray doesn't stop people. And if you watch a lot of cop arrest videos, like police activity on YouTube, you'll see how pepper spray doesn't always stop. So it's not... they need to make it more potent, I'd argue. So, you shouldn't tell yourself you deserve the pain. Rather, you should say, what did I not see? How can I identify evil better? You know, how can I avoid these types of people and situations? Because if you think about rats, they learn from the deaths of others. If you watch this documentary, I think it was just called Rats. It was New York City has a rat problem, and they did this thing where they watched these rats where they'd put poison pellets, and the rats would see that another rat would die, and then they would avoid that food. Like, in the animal kingdom, you will see that animals see the mistakes of others, and they adapt. So, like, crows are real smart. They learn, and they adapt. And we have to do that, too, because we were given the gift of a brain. And learn from other people's mistakes. Learn from your mistakes. And don't talk to yourself like how Janine, the character, is doing. But the feminist is really working hard to make you angry. You know, she's trying to get under your fingernails. Okay. Now, on the next page, there was something I wanted to share with you. I sink down into my body as into a swamp, Finland, where only I know the footing, treacherous ground, my own territory. I become the earth. I set my ear against it for rumors of the future. Each twins, each murmur of slight pain, ripples of slow off matter, swellings and diminishings of tissue, the droolings of the flesh. These are signs, these are the things I need to know about. Each month I watch for blood fearfully, for when it comes it means failure. I have failed once again to fulfill the expectations of others, which have become my own. So, remember, the handmaid's duty is to be surrogates. And they have a two-year term, usually, per household. Okay? So, she has to try to get pregnant, and that's better. And some women who can't produce children are sent off to the colonies. I used to think of my body as an instrument of pleasure or a means of transportation, or an implement for the accomplishment of my will. I could use it to run, push buttons of one sort or another, make things happen. There were limits, but my body was, nevertheless, lithe, single, solid, one with me. So here we see the body as an instrument. Now, this comes of pleasure. So this is the feminist argument where intercourse doesn't have to be for procreation. It can be for pleasure alone. This is the hedonist argument. But then there's the other side that says, no, you should only have intimacy when you intend to have children from each act. But then the bigger argument is, a woman can only get pregnant a few days out of the whole month, depending on where she's at in her cycle and when she's ovulating. You know? And when women are tracking their ovulation, it's like, if you want to get pregnant, you can track your ovulating. There's also bodily signs you can look for. Okay? So, you can track it, and then out of that time, there's a lower chance of you getting pregnant. And when you hit menopause, and you no longer really have the high rates of getting pregnant, I think then you can get into the pleasure aspect. But your body has so many functions, and that's what makes it unique. Now, the flesh arranges itself differently. I am a cloud, congealed, around a central object, the shape of a pear, which is hard and more real than I am, and glows red within its translucent wrapping. Inside it is a space huge as the sky at night, and dark curved like that through black red rather than black. So she gets into this really weird description thing. She goes off on these tangents a little bit, kind of gets into the female mind, I'd argue, because we can kind of get like that, where we're like, the type of poetry I like is different than some people who are like, air, breathe, feel the wetness, you know? So I feel like she does that a little bit in her book. A little bit of like pot smoking, reggae, bohemianness going on there. Which makes sense when you look at, in the second book, The Testaments, how she made the two main characters who ran this thrift shop, you know, who were the adoptive parents of baby Nicole, aka Daisy. So, those types of spasms she has make sense when you look how she writes the other characters. And so, that's also unique. I'm running with her. Oh yeah, now she's going to talk about another thing, okay? This is where she's... Okay, hold on, I'll back up. I'll just rewind. I'm in our first apartment in the bedroom. I'm standing in front of the cupboard, which has folding doors made of wood. Around me, I know it's empty. All the furniture is gone. The floors are bare. No carpets even. But despite the cupboard is full of clothes, I think they're my clothes, but they don't look like mine. I've never seen them before. Maybe they're clothes belonging to Luke's wife, whom I've also never seen. Only pictures and a voice on the phone late at night when she was calling us, crying, accusing before the divorce. So you see this? This woman is crying, accusing, like, oh, why are you cheating on me? What are you doing? And the main character is perfectly fine with hurting that woman. Right? She's perfectly fine with it. This is the funny thing about female adultery. I mentioned this in the past, where tons of women, they're like, I don't care if he's married. You know? I'm gonna be a sugar baby. And they'll make all sorts of justifications. They'll say, well, the mistress ain't married, the man is, so blame him. Why are you always blaming the woman for everything? I say blame both, because both are guilty. But if you're a woman who knowingly sleeps with a married man, then you're bad. Now, you want to do halal polygamy? Totally different story. Right? But I'm talking about people who profess to be Christian, or, you know, atheists who agree to a monogamous relationship, and they're not in an open relationship. So, the funny thing is just seeing how many gold diggers, sugar babies, sprinkle lights, will justify sleeping with married men and totally ignoring how they hurt other women. This is what makes the matriarchy will be so great. It'll be a utopia for women. The patriarchy oppresses women. Women oppressing each other. Look at this chick. She's crying. You know, they're not even fully divorced and he's already boinking this chick. You see what I'm saying? And so I wanted to share that part with you. Now, there is... Because she does a lot of reminiscing, the character, okay? Between her and Luke, her child, stuff like that. I'm running with her, holding her hand, pulling, dragging her through the bracken. She's only half awake because of the pill I gave her, so she wouldn't cry or say anything that would give us away. She doesn't know where she is. So here I'm getting the Uncle Tom's Cabin. I believe that was what it was. I remember reading a story in American Lit where, in an anthology book, there was a slave girl who had her baby and she was going through the snow and the rivers trying to get away and stuff. So she's put that example in here, right? Now, the pill thing, that reminds me of what the coyotes, the people who are human smugglers, do when they bring, some of them are also cartel members, when people come from Latin America to the border, because children are pilled up so that they are quiet, so they don't get caught by the border patrol. And there's been video footage of that. And people on their phones will film, and you'll see these toddlers like they're gonked out because they've been given pills. So she's setting up a scene here where she's a woman trying to escape from the eyes of Gilead, where they're snatching up women. So she's putting a clever thing in here to give you fear as a woman. You're with your child. There's people coming after you, and you're holding your baby. So she's really getting into the motherly love between a child and the mom. You know, the ground is uneven, rocks, dead branches, the smell of damp earth. Old leaves, she can't run fast enough. By myself, I could run faster. I'm a good runner. Now she's crying, she's frightened. I want to carry her, but she would be too heavy. I have my hiking boots on, and I think when we reach the water, I'll have to kick them off. Will it be too cold? Will she be able to swim that far? What about the current? We weren't expecting this. Quiet, I say to her angrily. I think about her drowning, and this thought slows me. Then shots come behind us, not loud, not like firecrackers, but sharp and crisp like a dry branch snapping. It sounds wrong. Nothing ever sounds the way you think it will. And I hear a voice. Down. Is it a real voice or a voice inside my head? Or my own voice out loud? So here you're getting like pop, 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 pop. You know, or like the way like a sniper does, like a rifle. I pull her to the ground and roll on top of her to cover her, shield her. Quiet, I say again. My face is wet. Sweat or tears. I feel calm and floating, as if I'm no longer in my body. Close to my eyes there's a leaf, red, turned early. I can see every bright vein. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I ease off. I don't want to smother her. Instead, I curl myself around her, keeping my hand over her mouth. So here you get a motherly instinct to protect, to hide. You can put yourself in the shoes of this situation and really feel empathy. But remember, she's really trying to set up the dystopianism. There's breath and the knocking of my heart, the pounding at the door of the house at night, where you thought you would be safe. Is all right. I'm here, I say. Whisper, please be quiet. But how can she? She's too young. It's too late. We come apart, my arms are held, and the edges go dark. And nothing is left but a little window, a very little window, like the wrong end of a telescope, like the window on a Christmas card, an old one. Night and ice outside, and within a candle, a shining tree, a family. I can hear the bells even, sleigh bells from the radio, old music. See, this is where she goes off on a tangent. It's like, yes, if you see the Christmas cards, there's a window. Okay, like you're describing how when you're being pulled away or a situation, it's very small in time. But going into details about hearing bells, you're going ranting a little bit. But through this window, I can see small but very clear. I can see her going away from me, through the trees, which are already turning red and yellow, holding out her arms to me, being carried away. So she's caught, and her child's taken. So you're getting to learn a lot about the character and the author. You read a section, you're there at the moment, then she describes her surroundings in some poetic, weird way. Then she talks about her past, and then you go back and forth into these different moments. So you got to get used to the beat of the book in that sense. The bell wakes me, and then Cora, knocking at my door. I sit up on the rug, wipe my wet face with my sleeve. Of all the dreams, this is the worst. So she's had a bad dream, but also it's a recollection, because her child was taken from her. So she's painted a very tight picture here for you. Now we're in the section called Household, chapter 14. When the bell has finished, I descend the stairs. A brief waif in the eye of glass that hangs on down the stairwell. The clock ticks with its pendulum, keeping time. My feet in their neat red shoes count the way down. The sitting room door is wide open. I go in. So far, no one else is here. Think of like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, those red shoes. She taps them, and that's like a summon the good witch or something. I forget. But Dorothy in the red shoes were a helper. Here you see the red shoes as something different. And then you look at the Pope in his red shoes. Right? Something very clownish about red shoes. The sitting room door is wide open. I go in. So far, no one else is here. I don't sit, but take my place, kneeling near the chair with the footstool, where Serena Joy will shortly enthrone herself, leaning on her cane, while she lowers herself down. Possibly she'll put a hand on my shoulder to steady herself, as if I'm a piece of furniture. She's done it before. See, now, that's something I thought was a bit cunty. Oh, I'm a piece of furniture because you don't want to fall on the floor and lose your balance. Like, there's nothing wrong with holding onto the shoulder of someone and being steady. When you get older, you do that kind of stuff, and the handmaid is a member of the household. So, you know, oh, if you dare to touch me so that you don't fall over, you're treating me like an object, like a furniture. It's like, get over yourself. Get over yourself. The sitting room would once have been called a drawing room, perhaps then a living room, or maybe it's a parlor. The kind with spiders and flies. But now it's officially a sitting room, because that's what's done in it. And so, for others, there's standing room only. The posture of the body is important. Here and now, minor discomforts are instructive. So, yeah, not everything can just be consistent comfort, because too much comfort is bad for you. A little discomfort is instructive to the soul, no doubt. Then she goes on to a very psychedelic description of the room, which I just didn't think was important. Okay. Over here on the next page, 81, there was a part I wanted to share with you. Let's see. Okay. Every once in a while, I would take it out and look at it. It would make me feel better that I have power. Oh yes, hold on, wait. Okay, so she's in like the living room, right, where they were, the drawing room. And she describes Serena Joy's perfume as Lily of the Valley, and how it's a luxury to have perfume. The room smells of lemon oil, heavy cloth, fading daffodils, stuff like that. Okay? And then she says, I would like to steal something from this room. I would like to take some small thing, the scrolled ashtray, the little silver pill box from the mantel perhaps, or dried flower, hide it in the folds of my dress, or in my zippered sleeve. Keep it there until this evening is over. Secret in my room, under the bed, or in a shoe, or in a slit, in the hard, petite point faith cushion. Every once in a while I would take it out and look at it. It It would make me feel that I have power. So she's a thief. A very strange thief. So not only is she an adulteress, but she's a thief. I mean, and she taunts Janine, who's a sniveling coward. But she likes to bully the weak. Janine is weak. And she is very oh, if you hold on to me, when Serena Joy held my shoulder for a couple seconds so she didn't tilt over, she treated me like an object. I don't really like the character of this woman. But such a feeling would be an illusion, and too risky. My hands stay where they are, folded in my lap. Thighs together, heels tucked underneath me, pressing up against my body. Head lowered. So here you see a very submissive, classy pose, but she puts that as you should be spread legs, yeah. You should be a very, imitate a man who's drunk. That's how you should behave. The way she doesn't like gracefulness. If you think of how the geishas of China, they have hairpins, they have nice robes, their body language, they're graceful. Woo! Or think of in Harry Potter, what's her name? Fleur, the French girls who came on that flying chariot in Goblet of Fire. They're they wear these blue dresses, and the way they parade in is very smooth and graceful, like ballerinas. The author here really doesn't like gracefulness, because she's hands folded in my lap, thighs together, heels tucked underneath me. So she'd rather have you be in a mini skirt with your legs super wide, spread eagle, and feet pointy. The more you read her books and the more you learn about the author, you can see what she's shaming by how she frames it. And the head lowered, so instead she wants you to be looking straight, defiant. Ugh. Like the ladies on the Vogue magazine, sometimes they can be quite vulgar. Other times they try to be faux fox classy. But she really doesn't like the submissive, classy, graceful Christian ethos that used to exist. Now Christian women show their cleavage and wear a choker cross, and do OF. Or they wear a dress that goes to their knees and wear high heels and a tight shirt and cleavage and then go to church. I remember I saw a wedding the other day at a Catholic church. These women, I couldn't believe the way they were dressed. Like they're going to a nightclub. They got zero shames. Some of them, their entire back is exposed. They like to entice the men. The men are all in suits looking professional. The women look like they're escorts. It's really bizarre. So the handmaids are taught in where they all go to be trained. The Red Center? Ardua Hall is where the aunts are. I think it's called the Red Center. But they get taught how to move their bodies and walk. But the author wants to frame that as bad. In my mouth, there's the taste of toothpaste, fake mint and plaster. I wait for the household to assemble. Household. That is what we are. The commander is the head of the household. The house is what he holds, to have and to hold till death do us part. The hold of a ship. Hollow. So do you see how she just stabbed the patriarchy there? The commander. Remember how women will say that if a man's the head of the household, he's a tyrannical dictator? Commander and dictator have a communistic language to them, a fascistic language. Now, the United States President is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. But the commander of a ship, right? He's captain, guides. But when you say the word commander, it's a militaristic angle. But the commanders are in the government of Gilead. And she puts this line in here, "Till death do us part." So oppressive. The man will always lead, and we women will never leave the household. really ignoring how so many women, if they had a feckless, weak lover, husband, they wouldn't like him. In the Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, because it Lampoon's, the Griswolds, the lady who played in Seinfeld with the curly hair, Ellen was her name? I forget. She's played in Seinfeld. She has curly hair. She's a character in that Christmas movie, and she's married to like a rich guy, and she gets mad that Griswold, the guy, he took a chainsaw and cut down their tree, and it goes through the house, and they're very bad neighbors, the Griswolds. And she tells her man, you go over there and you punch him straight in the face. Like she's trying to get him to do something. And he doesn't. He's like, you expect me to hit somebody? I can't just go hit somebody. Like he's like the biggest wimp, right? And you can tell she leads the relationship. And like he's a total wimp, even though he's rich and he has his hair slicked back all greasy. Gavin Newsom style. And she goes over to the Griswolds, knocks on the door. And he opens it, a squirrel jumps out, and the dog, the Rottweiler, chases it, and they land on her. She goes back to her apartment. I mean, not her apartment, her house. Her clothes all messed up. And he goes, what happened to you? To her man. And then she just gets her fist and clocks him right in the face. And that's a sign that, okay, women, even though this classic Christmas movie, women don't want to be with a guy who can't stand up for his woman, stand up for his household, right? The Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, something like that. It's a classic one. It's on HBO. Watched it as a kid. So feminists pretend they don't want the man to be the head of the household, but even in comedy, you see what it would be like. And does a woman really like to be around a man who she's always got to bitch and complain at? You need to go get a job. You ain't got no job. You ain't got no money. You don't got this. Go do that. Like, does she really want to nag him to death? Isn't that exhausting? A commander is someone who is organized, okay? Delegates, differentiates things, leads, takes a huge burden off your back. See, women are good at multitasking, but then you'll see feminist art where it'll have a woman, she'll have multiple arms, like a weird Hindu deity lady. Like she'll have multiple arms. One hand she's frying an egg, then other arm she's holding a baby, the next one she's folding laundry. She's multitasking. And how oppressive it is. She has to do so much and she ain't got no maids and nothing and her man's gone. He's at work, so he can't help. She's maintaining the household all on her own, and she's exhausted. So, now you want to make the man even more second, third, fourth place in the hierarchy? You want to do all that, plus make sure every bill is paid, make sure the property taxes are in order, deal with, all the stuff you gotta do. I don't think you really want that. And you'll be like, oh, we're equal. You can discuss things, but sometimes it's nice to just let someone else handle the situation. Like if you guys are gonna put new carpet in, yeah, you come together and say, hey, do you like this color? Maybe we should get a thinner carpet, not such shaggy carpet. Or I'm gonna paint this room. What do you think about this shade? Is it okay if I get this brand? It might be an expensive brand of paint. Hey, maybe we should pay someone to paint. You see what I'm saying? Like that stuff you can totally come together. But if you're just gonna splurge out, and do whatever you want, he comes home and you're like, what? But then there are some men who may start a project in the garage, it's really loud, and you're like, what are you doing, But he maybe has a goal in mind for something that he wants to do for the household. So, I really like the car analogy. Like, you're in the second seat, but your hands ain't on the steering wheel, and they may be distracted and you may see something, but you can tell them, but at the same time, like, when you are backseat driving, you can create more anxiety in your husband. Like, look out for that, look out for this, look out for that, ah! And then he's just like, Everything's fine. Calm down, you know? My grandma would have that a lot. Where, and she'd be like, look out! And then my grandma would be like, it's fine. Like, it's, so, just like a car can only really have one driver, your household has some nuance to it, where someone's got to make the final decision. And so the till death do us part, is so dramatic and like anti-marriage and makes it sound like an eternity. Like, who should the handmaid be in this house? She's always looking at items wanting to shank somebody and shank herself. Clearly she's not in the best mental health to be the leader of anybody. If your mental health is broken, you cannot lead. Cora comes in first, then Rita, wiping her hands on her apron. They too have been summoned by the bell. They resent it. They have other things to do, the dishes for instance, but they need to be here. They all need to be here. The ceremony demands it. We are all obliged to sit through this, one way or another. Rita scowls at me before slipping in to stand behind me. It's my fault. This waste of her time. Not mine, but my body's. If there is a difference, even the commander is subject to its whims. So they do a really weird ritual of like, he reads from the Bible, and everyone has to sit around and listen to him read the Bible. Everyone in the household. Before he can engage in intercourse with the handmaid. And the commander's wife is there. You know? And so, it's very creepy. And they also talks about how they watch some things on the TV and how it's a joy. Because they don't really get to watch a lot of the news. And so, here is one of the segments of that. Wooded hills seen from above. The trees a sickly yellow. I wish she'd fix the color. So she's looking at the contrast because the contrast is really important. The Appalachian in the tone. You used to be able to do that in the old-fashioned TVs. I don't know so much about any of the smart TVs. The Appalachian Highlands, says the voiceover, where the angels of the apocalypse, 4th Division, are smoking out a pocket of Baptist guerrillas. With air support from the 21st Battalion of the Angels of Light. We are shown 2 helicopters, black ones with silver wings painted on the sides. Below them, a clump of trees explodes. Now, a close shot of a prisoner with a stubbled and dirty face, flanked by 2 angels in their neat black uniforms. So, here, you get to see the victories, but they mention they never show the defeats. But also it could be just be actors. So the Quakers, the Baptists, and the Catholics, they're all like taboo in here. So the Gilead seem to have their own sect of Christianity. So you have sectarian Christian strife going on. Okay? And it's interesting. Just the way, I don't know, man. There's... how do I put this the best way? This author has a lot of resentment for Christians and Muslims. By the language she uses, by the interviews she does, but she's very pro-J. You know? And Baptist guerrillas wouldn't be very accurate. You're more likely to say Catholic guerrillas. Guerrillas. Because like in Cuba, you'd have some Catholics, and then you'd have some atheist communists, they go into war with each other. So, guerrilla warfare is something used a lot in parts of Africa and Latin America. So, for a Baptist, something like American Baptist, she's hinting at the redneck Christian guys who are like preppers. That's what she's hinting at. Because it's not the proper, like, guerrilla warfare can be used for people other than those cultures who normally use that tactic. But the preppers with their vests and their rifles and their outposts, some people really like calling them the new version of guerrillas in the Americana fashion. So that's what she's hinting at here by having that. Now, she does something interesting here. angels of the apocalypse, and then having things like angels of light. So parts of the military are given the word of angels, which creates an irony where they're not acting very angelic. You know, we as Muslims, we wouldn't call certain parts of that military angels, because when you think of an angel, you think of something softer. At least in the Christian fashion, angels are put upon as like humanoid and very blissful, floating in the sky. You know, that's how they're depicted. And so, having a military battalion name with something angelic is odd. So she's trying to make it be like, oh look, they call themselves angels, but they're not acting like angels. Irony, hypocrisy, see what I mean? The anchorman comes on now. His manner is kindly, fatherly. He gazes out at us from the screen, looking with his tan, his white hair, and candid eyes, wise wrinkling around them, like everybody's ideal grandfather. What he's telling us, his level smile implies, is for our own good. Everything will be all right soon. I promise. There will be peace. You must trust. You must go to sleep like good children. So she's talking like patronizing. Some old-fashioned newscasters, they do have that type of, hey, Timmy, everything's going to be okay. You just go on to bed. Like, it's a bit of condescending, pretentious, patronizing tone. So, propaganda news where you don't really get the gist. And if you notice that some news anchors, they all talk in the same fake tone. And who delivers your propaganda is very important. Your talking head, your spokesperson, your PR person delivering the message really is important, because how the audience will receive that individual matters. And so selecting the right talking head is important for propaganda. So she's just pointing out how this anchorman, he's got the wrinkles, he's got white hair, he has gentle eyes, so he's coming off as like a wholesome guy, but it's just to be spewing in totally lies. And he's very convincing of it, and people want to believe him. And she describes him as an old movie star. So you gotta be careful, you gotta be careful. So, think of the Dos Equis guy, the beer guy who does the commercial. That's what I think of when she describes him. And so Serena let them watch the news, so you see a little bit of the small treats that people take for granted. So she's just describing to you the restrictedness. So in this section that we did, we got to see more of her, the ceremony, the irony, and just how she thinks about people, a little bit about her past, her mental state, okay? How she treats other women. She has a lot of negative things to say about Janine, about Serena Joy. Lots good to say about Moria, though, even though Moria is vulgar. So you see her values are a bit skewed, and you can see how if you were an aunt, you had to train up this chick, you would be like, gotta be careful. So the fun thing to do in this book is to put yourself in the perspective of the commander, of the wife, of the handmaid, of the Marthas, who are the cooks, This is a very good exercise, because then you can see the character in a multi-level form. Okay? So let me know what you think. And please like, comment, subscribe, and share. If you'd like to support my work and read more about what I write, you can join my blog at www.subscribestar.com/Milahan Archive. Hope to see you there. Goodbye. Yeah.